and welcome to Countercultural Encounters. My name is Liza Chuma and with me is Nifasini.
Hi.
On today's episode, we are going to be deep diving into boundaries. What really are boundaries? Why should I set them? Okay. Have you ever thought to yourself, I need to have boundaries? Have you ever tried instituting those boundaries? Nibs?
I think I have boundaries. In fact, I feel like I'm very boundary defined, I guess. And in fact, I think that I value boundaries so highly because I found that the times when I felt most misaligned are when I compromised on my boundaries.
So what helped you set your boundaries? What required it?
I think like most people, boundaries are first taught to us. So whether they're cultural boundaries, like this is how you greet people, this is what you refrain from doing in communal settings and things like that. I think that the environment you also shapes you. So for example, the kind of school you go to, the kinds of rules you have, don't sit too close or don't talk to people this way. So those were my very first, experiences at boundary setting. I think that as my personality evolved, as I've grown, I've had different boundaries, whether as an adolescent, for example, where I didn't want certain types of interactions with people. So for example, I didn't like being carried as a baby. I didn't mind too much being hugged growing up, but the older I grew, the more I realized that, for example, being touched by people was a boundary I could define, for example. So I think that most of my choices were defined by the environment that shaped me, and then my own choices as I became more aware of my personality and my agency.
Okay. I like the part where you went back to culture, because we talk about boundary in 2026 like, oh, it's my thing. Like,
exactly.
I'm the one who initiated the concept of boundary, but your parents had boundaries. Don't eat in someone's house.
Exactly. Go to bed at so time.
All of those things were boundaries. So at what point did we lose touch with boundaries? Because I think we did lose touch, and now we are relearning boundary setting as adults.
I think that for the most part, one of the things I've observed, at least in my experience, and when I watch other people and as of what different generations, those before me, those after me, I think that most of it comes to play where we realize or we discover our own agency and how much freedom we actually have to curate the kind of lives we have. I think that many times we don't question why we're doing those things. So for example, difficult experiences inform certain choices, and sometimes because we're questioning the reasons why we're then instituting these new boundaries, we sort of have this ownership of boundaries that are really more walls rather than
you took the next thing out of my mouth.
Really more walls than just, I guess, doors that can be opened and closed. Just like it's a wall, I fence everybody out and I just don't do this, and it's a hard no. And one of the reasons why these kinds of conversations are relevant is because we must begin to think, why does this even exist? Sometimes you need a wall, so you need to shut certain things out permanently. But sometimes what you just need is a door. Or sometimes you need checks at the door. And so I think in my mind, boundaries are the checks at the door. Or effective boundaries are when you have a door with checks there. So there's some level of discretion around it because you've thought about it. And it is about your safety as well as the safety of others.
Okay.
That's my picture of healthy boundaries.
I think the way it works in my mind is that boundary is a fence with a gate.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So if you scale over my wall, you're a thief.
Yes.
So
I agree.
When people say things like, I want someone who can climb the wall, that's a thief. Which means they have practice of doing this.
Yeah.
Of breaking people's boundaries. Yeah. So you need defense to exist.
Also, why do you want someone to rob you? That's a story for another day.
Anyway, and so when you have a gate and someone comes to your gate, you can communicate to them or with them through your gate without opening it.
Fair enough.
So I can speak with you on who is that and why are you here? Well, this is the wrong address. You're supposed to be going to the house down the road and all of that. You can communicate without being trapped. And having a gate means you can walk out of your gate. You can open your gate for someone to come in. You're not trapped.
You know what I'm realizing? I'm realizing that this takes a lot of self-awareness because you have to have an awareness that I'm still safe. that I have a fence and I have a gate, and so I am safe. I think that sometimes the reasons why people interact that way is because they feel threatened the moment something is approaching. And again, I think that takes us back to when people have boundaries informed by difficult experiences.
True. So what I would say to a listener who is struggling with setting boundaries is ask yourself why you need boundaries. If you can tell yourself why, when you set your boundary, it becomes an institution.
Okay, can you explain that a bit?
So an institution has a system, a curriculum that you go through until you get to a certain level. You're not a graduate of that institution.
Can you just explain this to me like I'm 5?
If you go to a university, you're going to graduate as an engineer, for example. You must have gone through a set of curriculum to then be called an engineer.
Okay.
So if I'm going to call someone my friend, they must have gone through a system that tells me this person is worthy of being called friend. What did they do that proved integrity? What did they do that proved that they were kind? What did they do that proved that they are good with family? What did they do that proved that they are worthy of my heart? If people don't pass the test and you give it to them, they are going to disrespect it because they don't know the value. They didn't work for it.
I see. This is really deep because I'm thinking to myself that many times, for example, these things are perceived based on assumptions. So, for example, someone is kind to his nephew does not mean that he'll be kind to your nephew, for example. Doesn't mean that he's kind to his siblings. Doesn't mean that he'll be kind or as kind to your siblings. What they may assume their responsibility towards your siblings will be niceness. And so we conflate these things because sometimes niceness looks like what we think kindness is.
What's the difference?
So niceness is performative and it's usually about how you are perceived.
Okay.
It's rarely about the recipient of the action.
Okay. I like the difference between niceness and kindness. How then do people pay attention to know that, okay, this person is nice to their nephew? How am I going to know they are nice to my nephew? How do you do the measurements before you set the boundary?
I think one of the things that's important about boundary setting is patience. Having a patient disposition toward the concept of boundaries. Remembering that boundaries are about your safety and my safety. And so if I'm paying attention or I'm looking to understand, are you kind or are you nice? I must then be able to see, is your action safe for you and for me? So I'm going to give a long stretch. Okay. So you know when people say things like, but I did this for you. And you're thinking, oh, I thought you were kind. And then you realize what happened was niceness. What happened was niceness. And it was niceness because whether intentionally or unintentionally, at that point, there is evidence that that action was about how this person was perceived. And therefore, what they will receive because of your perception of their action, right?
Or what they expect you to respond with.
Exactly. And so you are trying to inspect the fruit throughout the process of the transaction. You want to assess, for example, does this person constantly expect reciprocity? Is this a transactional kindness? Then that's niceness, because in that instance, it was nice because there's an expectation of something else. Kindness is genuine, selfless disposition to investing in someone else. And so what that means is that I'm not doing it because I'm expecting any recourse to myself.
Okay.
I'm doing it because I'm after your well-being. And most times, chances are that there's safety involved in the sense that if you, for example, never said thank you, I won't be so bothered that you didn't say thank you. Or I won't be so bothered that I will swear of doing something kind for you again next time. You find that, for example, if you miss saying thank you to me because I did something for you, right? There are people who will say, yeah, I'm not going to do something kind for her again. Or I'm not going to do something for her again. And then you start to say, actually, then, were you being kind? Or was that a tool for control? And so they didn't wear the face of niceness.
Tool for control.
I know.
Tool for control.
You started it. You said we're going deep today.
When it comes to boundary, I think people don't pay attention that boundary is a long-term conversation.
Yes.
So typically people have this sense of, I'm going to put my walls up when I meet you. And then the moment you can make me laugh for 30 minutes, oh, this person is so amazing, I'm just going to bring the walls down.
Yeah.
It was amazing speaking with you today. I love that we're able to help people come into our world and understand how boundaries work. Now that you know what you know, go set some boundaries this week. Bye.